This is Greg Pruitt, formerly of the Cleveland Browns, and you're listening to The Sports Fix.
Sports Fix listeners, like us on Facebook today. Facebook.com/The Sports Fix.
Hey guys, football season's only just begun, but it already feels like the playoffs at DraftKings.com, America's favorite one-week fantasy football site. One-week fantasy at DraftKings means no season-long commitments. It's fantasy football on demand, just like the Sports Fix. Play where you want, when you want, with the players you want today. And with $1 million up for grabs every week, every game is the big game, and every play matters. So 1st and 10 in the first quarter feels like 4th and goal with just a second left, and one long touchdown run could mean more than just a victory for your favorite team. It could mean you've just turned your love of football into $1 million payday, my friend. This isn't fantasy as usual. This is DraftKings. Welcome to the big time. Hurry to DraftKings.com now and use promo code Spreaker to play for free for a shot at $1 million in this weekend's Millionaire Maker event. Enter Spreaker for free entry now only at DraftKings.com. DraftKings.com. That's DraftKings.com.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Fantasy Jocks. Visit FantasyJocks.com, your fantasy sports superstore. Championship belts, rings, trophies, and more.
Live in Ohio, it's time to get your fix. The Sports Fix.
And away we go, off and running. And of course, just before we go on the air, of course, that's when everything hits the fan, and I have to change. I have to change my entire thoughts. I haven't even gotten my thoughts regathered yet. I guess we're gonna do it live here together on the air. As the Browns sent me an email, nice and short and to the point. This thing was one of the shorter emails I've gotten from the old Brownies in quite some time here. Johnny Manziel officially named against the Tennessee Titans. Josh McCown unable to get out. It's like he's trapped in a closet. Tom Cruise has got him in the closet. He can't get out of the closet. He's trapped in the NFL's concussion protocol, and he can't get out. Therefore, he will not be playing for the Browns this weekend. And I can't lie. That immediately made me scrap. This is not a sound effect. That's the actual show going in the garden. Not the show, just my thoughts on the game, because there was thoughts A and thoughts B on how this game could go down. Not to be confused with Jose and Hose B, but there were definitely two sets of thoughts, and I'm now on the second one, and we're going to talk about that here in just a minute. But if you haven't heard, Johnny Manziel will officially start for the Browns here this weekend. Josh McCown, again, trapped in the NFL's concussion protocol, unable to escape in time for this weekend's clash with the Tennessee Titans. And now a whole week of preparation. We'll see. I've got my thoughts, as you guys know. And again, I'll tell you straight up, I said it with Dan Wismar the other day, two different opinions on how this game could go, and this is the one that is not as favorable for the Browns. We're going to talk about it, though. I've got some takes in the hotline from some of you guys. I'm going to open up the phones. We're going to talk about the Browns and the Titans this weekend. We got the Buckeyes and NIU, and that is going to be a tougher game than some of you guys out there may want to give the old Mac credit for, but NIU is a very, very strong team. We're going to talk about all of that. Indians, we've got tons of things going on today. Mike Brandenberry from DidTheTribeWinLastNight.com is going to join us. BJ Riddell, Fantasy Football for Winners, version 2.0 coming your way. Help you set the stage for this weekend here with the fantasy football, doohickeys, all those things. We're going to do all that, talk about lots of stuff. I've got a ton of things to get into. As I said, Jonathan Knight unable to be with us today. He'll be back next Friday, but Mike Brandenberry's here. BJ's here. I'm here. We're opening up the phones. We're doing the thing. So, hey, I think we're ready to go. Welcome in, you guys, to the Sports Fix, a weekend edition here. I'm your host, the Big Daddy on the microphone, J-Rocc, Jerry Myers. Call me what you will. Call me happy to be here, baby. Ready for another weekend of football across the board of sports. Hey, I've got a game tonight, speaking of football, and a good one. Euclid and Menor. And I'll tell you what, I'm calling the upset. I think Euclid's going to pull the road upset in this one. I'm going to be broadcasting that one on 1330. I'll get into that. I'm jumping ahead of myself. This is the Sports Fix. I'm J-Rocc. You're listening live. Welcome in across the Sports Fix Radio Network. Maybe you're tuned in on TuneIn, tunein.com, and their radio and mobile apps worldwide. I didn't even do that on purpose there. On Spreaker, on Mixler, their respective websites, digital, mobile apps as well. And, of course, those of you listening on the website, our home base, thesportsfix.net, where it all launches. It's the jump point. Make sure you bookmark it. The show broadcasts live from the website every day. So if any of those wonderful other sites that you're on, if they fail you while you're listening to the show, thesportsfix.net is always your backup. Make sure you bookmark it and check it out today as well. Thousands of you guys, I say it every day, listening around the world in different time zones, different countries, all over the place on sites like iHeartRadio, the world's largest internet radio provider, on iTunes. Speaking of iHeartRadio, when are they going to put us on live? I'll tell you what, that's the next barrier that I'm looking to break down, is to get the live feed of the Sports Fix blasting across iHeartRadio. But welcome in those of you on there. Those of you on, as we said, all of the digital delays, all the places that you're enjoying the show, iTunes, on Stitcher, CarPlay, however you're doing it. Thank you guys so much. Each and every time we get together and do this, you guys make this thing happen. You make this a happy home. And thank you guys for getting your fix. And we're going to do that. This is how we do it, on the phones, on the emails, on the social media. Facebook.com/thesportsfix. Twitter @The Sports Fix, CLE, email thesportsfix@AOL.com, or you can pick up the phone and let your fingers do the walking and your voice do the talking. 216-539-7535. What are your thoughts on the Browns this weekend? The Buckeyes on the Indians, chasing down the impossible. 4 games separate themselves from the free-falling Houston Astros, and they missed a chance last night. Bruce in the chat room, I'm with you. We're going to talk to Mike about that later, but you can't lose more than 2, maybe 3 the rest of the way here, but it's going to be one of those type deals for sure. But hell, at least we're talking about it. Stranger things have happened with the White Sox coming in next, and whatever it is that you want to talk about, get on the phones, 216-539-7535, Facebook.com/thesportsfix. Make sure you like the page while you're there. Join the 20,000 plus followers over there. Twitter @The Sports Fix, CLE, with a number nowhere near as impressive as 20,000. And email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com. You know what? I guess, before I get rolling, I kind of cut into it earlier. Tonight, game of the week, Integrity Radio High School Football Game of the Week on 1330 WINT. I've kind of become the de facto Mentor guy the last couple of weeks here, and they've been up and down. I had that great game 2 weeks ago against St. Ignatius, and then last week traveled down to Cincinnati and did them and St. Xavier, and again, Xavier's quite a squad over there, I'll just tell you that now. And now here they go looking to bounce back from that. Euclid going to Mentor, and I think they're going to pull the upset. They've got a heck of a running back over there, Euclid. They've got some wideouts, a quarterback that can get the ball out. Mentor, I want to see how they bounce back from literally being handed their lunch, patted on the head, and told to return home, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Those kids gave it their all, that's for sure, but boy, that defense that they faced, and that's what I'm interested in seeing, because when they play a team that doesn't have a defense, they can smack some points on the board. Arnie Hamilton will be doing the color with me tonight. I'm looking forward to bringing the call to you. Tune in on TuneIn. Maybe you're listening to the show online right now on TuneIn's website. 1330 has a channel there as well. Just look for 1330 WINT. You can listen on the radio dial here in Northeast Ohio, 1330 a.m., or you can stream online anywhere at WINTradio.com. It's going to be a lot of fun tonight. 6:45 pregame, 7 o'clock kickoff. Arnie Hamilton and myself with the call of Euclid and Mentor tonight on the high school football game of the week on WINT Radio. Looking forward to that one. Before I even dive into anything else, as I mentioned, Johnny Manziel named the starter. Got a phone call here on the hotline moments before that news came came out. But according to my next caller, it doesn't really matter who is going to be the quarterback for the Browns here this weekend. Caller, you're up on the Sports Fix.
It really doesn't matter.
There we go. Let's try that again.
J-Rocc, your friend from Northfield, Vic Maloney. J-Rocc, it really doesn't matter if it's Josh McCown, Johnny Manziel. It really, truly doesn't matter. They don't have any running backs. They don't have any wide receivers. They don't have a tight end. They don't even have a defense that they thought they did. Unless this team does a 360-degree turnaround in a week, which I don't see, this is going to be an even longer season than what they thought it was going to be. These first 3 games are games that we thought we should have been able to at least win 2 of the 3, if not 1 of the 3. I see the potential Rookie of the Year coming in here and torching the Browns. And to be quite frank, I think Joe Hayden is the most overpaid, overhyped cornerback in the entire NFL. He gets burnt more than toast on Sunday. It's from the top to the bottom, from Haslam to Farmer. I can't even say anything positive about Pettin. There was no preparation. There was no game plan. There was no nothing Sunday. Unless, like I said, I see a complete turnaround. This could be a 1-13, 2-12 year. At this point, is Brian Hoyer looking that bad? I was one of the people that was clamoring, give Johnny football a chance. Well, we've given him a chance. Now he either has a tennis elbow, sore elbow, Jack Daniels elbow, but nothing looks promising this year. The problem is, even if we get the number 1 pick next year, we'll blow it, as long as Farmer's involved. Over and out, J-Rocc. One more time, J-Rocc. One more time.
Well, there's a high level of optimism there. The mayor, good call there, you guys. 216-539-7535. 216-539-7535. Give your take there. Thanks to my man Vic for the phone call there. And clearly you can see which side of the fence he's on. Look, I mentioned 2 different ways I was looking at this game. I really truly believed that Josh McCown, if he had been the quarterback here, and Dan Wismar and I earlier in the week had this conversation, I believe that's a different level of opportunity for the Browns. I mean, listen, and I was thinking about this last night, and again, with Manziel, it changes the thing, and we'll kind of go in that direction here in a little bit, because you guys know I have a very, very, very big lack of belief in Johnny Manziel's ability to be a quarterback in the NFL, particularly at this moment in time. Maybe the future pans out differently, but right now I know what I see, and I sees what I sees, and so do all of you, unless you're fooling yourselves. But the kid is not ready to go out there and play. But last night I was thinking about doing some show prep, thinking about how I was going to talk about the game today, because think about this, New Orleans, that's a much tougher beat early in a season with much more unpredictability. The home atmosphere, that whole thing, it's not just waxing poetic and romantic. It is some reality. I mean, to me, it's a much harder beat to beat Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints, even if they're a lesser version of the New Orleans Saints. They're still a tough squad. Those types of things last year, harder beats than that. That being said, you brought up Vic there, brought up Hoyer in there. By the way, not going to start here already 1 week into things down there in Houston. Ryan Mallett's going to get the opportunity to start, or at least that's the word that came out of the Texans. But either way, that's having that veteran quarterback. Because I'm thinking about it last night, and I'm like, there's no way that it's harder to beat the Tennessee Titans than it was to win a couple of those games that they did there at this point last season. The quarterback changes the equation, because if you have a quarterback, whether he's the kind of guy that wins games or not, if you have a quarterback that doesn't lose games, if you have a quarterback, and I go to that first drive, which again is one of the best drives I think the Browns have had in years. That's not over-exaggeration. From end to end, play calling, all of that. And look, it's your first drive. You've been planning it for 6 months. I would hope that you've put a halfway decent game plan together there for your first scripted drive of the season. Regardless, somebody's got to go out there and execute it. I'm pretty sure every game plan looks solid on paper for every team. Somebody still has to go out and physically execute it. And Josh McCown did that for the Browns until he got hurt. I'm not going to be one of these secondary looking back at hindsight guys and say, oh, well, he should have known better. That man was trying to score a touchdown, which you may or may not have noticed. We don't do all that often here in Cleveland. I'm not going to in any way shame that man for going for the end zone. They need to all go a little harder for the end zone. And I'm half joking when I say that. But anyways, you saw the difference in the way I don't want to hear about the flashes of the good things that Johnny did, because that's what he's capable of at this point in his very immature development. And I don't mean that just be the off the field stuff. I'm talking about he is not a developed quarterback in any way. You're going to get a few flashes if you're lucky, because as you've seen, you don't always get the flashes. But at this point, I believe that's the best you can hope for, is a few flashes in between the fumbles, the sacks, the interceptions, the instinct to run first, run second, run third. That's never going away. That is never ever going. If you think that he is ever going to stop and think about when he should pass before he should run, you're nuts. Fight or flight kicks in with that boy every time, and flight will always win over fight. What was I looking at the other just a few hours ago, and I cannot remember. Oh, Pat McManaman from ESPN was doing a piece about this, and he quoted, because I didn't listen to the show, but on the Herd, on Colin Cowherd's show, on Fox Radio, he had Bill Parcells, the Hall of Fame coach, on, and they were talking about this quarterback matchup. You've got Marcus Mariota, who's 6'4", Johnny Manziel, less than 6 foot tall. And Bill Parcells makes a heck of a statement. He said, Coach Tom Landry, the great Tom Landry, taught me something when I was a very young coach. He said, if you start making exceptions when it comes to your team and your roster, and you say, well, this guy's a little bit small, this guy's a little bit short, this guy's a little bit slow, whatever, pretty soon all you have is a team full of exceptions. And that makes so much sense when you think about it. You end up with a team full of guys that may not be the biggest, but they got heart, or boy, do they got spunk, or whatever. You end up with a team full of exceptions. And he went on to continue that thought, did Coach Parcells. He said, Johnny Manziel is an exception. He's a fan favorite. He's popular. He's like a mascot. Think about that for a second. He's like a mascot. The fans root for him. He creates excitement. And while there have been a couple of guys like Fran Tarkenton, or to an extent Russell Wilson, that have been successful, they are a very minute percentage group. He says, me personally, I like the 6'5", 240-pound quarterback that can take a beating and is hard to tackle even when you do get your hands on him. And I mean, those are things we've talked about before. It's not like this is anything new, but that is a guy whose opinion is very highly well respected in many circles, including from a guy like myself. And I just agree with what he said. And we've seen it. Plain and simple, you saw it last week. If you believe that 5 days, not even 3.5 days this week of getting the number one reps is going to make a big difference, perhaps it will. But his problem last week wasn't being unprepared. His problem wasn't not knowing the playbook. It wasn't. So what my point is Johnny Manziel's problems, deficiencies last week were not the same as last year. He did know what he needed to do. He knew the plays. He was able to do that part of it. It's the execution part, and that doesn't come overnight if it's ever going to come at all. He's not ready to be a quarterback at the NFL level. I honestly believe that the Browns would be better off if they had started Austin Davis. However, he's just now catching up to the playbook, and this is a guy they really would have to highly scale the playbook back at this point, and you can't do that this early in the season. It's just not. I believe that that's probably the biggest thing there. That being said, it is what it is, but I believe it changes the Browns' opportunities to win a very winnable game. Well, you know what? I'll talk more about that. Phone lines are ringing. I want to go back to the phones right now and talk to you guys. 216-539-7535. 216-539-7535. 25 minutes from now, Mike Brandenberry is going to join us. BJ Riddell, Fantasy Football in Hour 2, but we're back to the phone lines. We're talking Browns, Titans, and we're talking to you. Caller, you're up on the Sports Fix.
J-Rocc Daddy, Jerry Myers, how are you today, brother?
My man, L. Jeezy, what's happening with you, baby? How you doing?
J-Rocc Daddy, it's Christmas in September, and I want to caution all the Browns fans out there about Johnny Manziel getting all the first-team reps. Let's not forget he has taken off 2 days of practice to rest his right elbow. So all those reps he's getting aren't that many, man. So this guy threw 24 pass attempts last week, and he had to take off 2 days of practice this week to rest that right elbow, man. I'm a little bit concerned. This is going to give Dick LeBeau an early Christmas present. When you say very winnable game, J-Rocc Daddy, if we weren't going up against a Dick LeBeau defense, I might be inclined to believe in that very winnable. But I got to tell you, if the Browns defense doesn't show me something more than they showed me last week, just touching the quarterback one time, this Marcus Mariota seems to be, and I know they played the Buccaneers, and it's not such a great team, but this Cleveland Browns football team hasn't shown me they're a great team yet either, J-Rocc.
Well,
Daddy.
let me jump in. Let me jump in where you're at so that we can kind of go back and forth here. A couple of things. Number one is I was talking to Dan Wismar earlier in the week, and I really do agree with what he said. The NFL, more than anywhere, what you expect to happen is usually the opposite of what happens, and usually what you saw in week 1 tends to reverse itself many times in week 2. So I do believe that for that reason alone, this game's going to play differently. But if you watch, talking about the defense, before we even jump into the quarterback, and this is where it ties right into the quarterback, is, to me, the secret is the ability not to turn the ball over. More than anything else, Josh McCown is not going to strike fear in a defense. He's not going to drive the Browns for millions of touchdowns. But if you notice that game last week, the Browns defense, while they showed holes and they showed no pressure on the quarterback, the score remained a relatively low-scoring game. They were trailing 14-10 there heading into the second half stretch of the game. And obviously when you then turn the ball over 2 and 3 possessions in a row, that's how the score spreads and gets run up very quickly. And I believe that's where the biggest difference in having a veteran quarterback comes in, because if you don't have that stretch of a 10, 12-minute run of just continuing to shoot yourself in the foot and allow the game to get away, I believe the Browns defense will keep them in most games, even though they're clearly not as potent at early juncture as we thought they were. That, to me, is where the quarterback hurts, because I do believe that if the quarterback cannot turn the ball over, whoever it is on Sunday, the Browns can win this game. I mean, this is still a Titan squad coming in here that the Browns, with a very similar defense, were able to deal with, although they did give up some points last year. But you hit on another point, and I'll throw it back to you. Dick LeBeau. I mentioned it the other day with Dan. That, combined with an underexperienced quarterback like Manziel, is what leads me to really feel very weak about the Browns' opportunity this weekend, because he is going to feast on a quarterback who is still learning the NFL game.
And to throw in a Dick LeBeau defense, J-Rocc, this guy has a tendency to confuse the quarterback. Look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Of course, they had Troy Polamalu over there, which was one of the great defensive players. He's probably going to go into the Hall of Fame. And I know the Titans don't have a Troy Polamalu, J-Rocc Daddy, but the key thing is they have Dick LeBeau, and this guy's a mastermind when it comes to defenses. And he's got to be licking his lips when you talk about the Browns mascot, Johnny Manziel, being a mascot, they should dress the guy up in a dog suit, put him on the sidelines, and start the other guy, even if you have to limit the playbooks. If they can't protect Manziel, and I got to tell you something, J-Rocc Daddy, handing off the football last week didn't seem to help. And we didn't get that much running yards. And if we can't get some holes opened up, but I don't know what's the matter with the feed and the
Well, you know what? Let me jump in there.
I don't know what's going on there, J-Rocc Daddy, but they got to open up the holes and get a running attack started, man, because if they don't, Manziel's going to be a sitting duck.
And I want to jump in there because you hit on two things that I'll answer back with you. You talked about the running game right there. Mike Pettin, I think, did a good job this week of pointing something out about the running game. Yes, the offensive line could blow a few more holes open, and anybody wants that wide open hole where a running back can march through and have that big, long gain. But when does the responsibility – and Mike Pettin threw – the responsibility back on the Crow this week. When does the responsibility fall to a running back to A, make somebody miss, or B, which is more your style, run somebody over? Because I didn't see any yards after contact. I didn't see any of that second and third effort. Yeah, your offensive line can always block better for you, but I believe one of the deficiencies right now in the Browns running game is the Browns running backs themselves not running guys over, not making – I mean, and Mike Pettin blatantly called Isaiah Crowell out on that. He said, hey, he's been working harder this week in practice on that very thing, doing what got you here. It's not just – you don't just wait for the line to open up that hole that Mike Pettin could run through for 12 yards. That's not what an NFL running back does, you know? I mean, that's going to be part of it. And defensively for the Titans, I got to tell you, this is not just a no-name defense. They've got some guys. Morgan's a great linebacker over there. Sensabaugh had the interception last week in the return. I think that Ray Horton, and now with the addition of an advisor of Dick LeBeau, they're crafting a decent – and Ray Horton, I'm telling you, the things did not work out here in Cleveland, but he's not the worst the worst defensive coordinator I've seen by far. And by the way, Bruce, I agree with you in the chat room. There's a third point talking about running backs on the other side.
J-Rocc,
Sankey and
let me
West.
Make one more,
yeah, go ahead.
Let me make one more point, and then I got to fly, brother.
Yeah.
Because I'm under limited time.
Let's do it.
You know, it wasn't so much Ray Horton didn't work out here in Cleveland. Ray Horton's defense, if I remember correctly, was pretty darn good.
It collapsed down the stretch. Ray Horton's defense
didn't work out here in Cleveland, man.
Yeah,
Chazinski gets fired after 1 year. That's where Joe Banner comes in with the moron text.
Okay, Ray Horton's defense was not as good.
Good work, man. I'll talk to you soon, brother.
All right, my man, you take it easy. Ray Horton's defense was not as good as Ray Horton told everybody it was in the second half of that season. He is a good coordinator, but that defense, he spent more time in the second half of that year telling you how good it was than actually showing you how good it was. Charles in the chat room, everybody on Tennessee is going to have a good game. I do disagree with that. I believe the Browns defense is going to step up to the challenge. I do think that you're going to see a much more physical Browns defense. I have no doubt. It's a home game. You saw them last year. That was a different Browns team when they came home and the stadium was rocking in New Orleans. And I'm just saying, that's going to be the atmosphere this weekend. And defensively, the Browns will come out. Offense is the question. That's going to be the question all season long, guys. But defensively, I don't think everybody's going to have a huge game, but they have a ton of weapons over there. I was just mentioning Weston Sankey. That's a great two-piece on the running attack. Absolutely. And, you got Mariota, who's going to be looking to show the Cleveland Browns up close and personal what they passed up the opportunity to get. And he'll show the guy on the other sideline. You got a matchup of the Heisman cats here going at it. One of them doing it one way and the other one doing it the other way. And, of course, we have to have the one that fits in the other category. But regardless, you've got that. He's got good receivers. I mentioned that the other day. I like that receiver squad. Hunter's the fourth guy over there now. You got Kendall Wright. They picked up Harry Douglas, who I think is going to, in many ways, down the stretch, be a great safety blanket for the young quarterback there. We saw it last week. he had the touchdown reception there, and they picked up the Dorial Green bat wide receivers. They got Delaney Walker, even though I don't think he's going to play. He's questionable on the injury report right now, but if he does, he's a beast at tight end. You guys know that, and I just talked about the Titans defense. To me, the dynamic of the game changed with the quarterback, because even if the Browns put together a low-risk game plan and a competent offensive game plan, when you have a quarterback who is always, and this is not blame Johnny, this is not bash Johnny, he's going to be good for a couple of turnovers every game, especially right now at the stage of his development that he's in. And you can't give a team like this 3, 4, or 5 more possessions than you end up getting there. I am predicting, see, Charles says they're not going to find the end zone. Boy, there's a lot of down opinions here today. I do believe they find the end zone. I believe Travis Benjamin's going to run a kickback, and I do think that they'll get in the end zone. That's not a rock solid defense that they've got over there, but it is definitely coached by, and again, Dick LeBeau is a new influence over there that you've got to add that little wrinkle to things. But I do think that offensively they're going to be challenged otherwise. I'm telling you, I was all set to come in here. And tell you how I thought the Browns were going to be able to walk their way through this, and now everything changes with the change of the quarterback. And what are your thoughts? 216-539-7535. 216-539-7535. They're beating me down in the chat room. I'm getting messages here. I'm getting hit up on Facebook. Where are you guys at? Here, Mike Earhart sends us a message on Facebook, facebook.com/thesportsfix. Says, Browns win. Manziel shines. Thus the start of the winning division and a playoff game. Browns 31, Titans 13. Game never in doubt from the kickoff. There you go. So Mike Earhart has apparently had himself a very good morning here, and he's feeling good about the Browns' chances. Jason Cato, not so much here on Facebook, as he answers the question as, why are you asking will they win? I've got a better chance of winning my fantasy game this weekend than the Browns do in winning their real life game. So there it is. Hit us up with your thoughts. Facebook.com/thesportsfix, Twitter @thesportsfix, CLE. Email us thesportsfix@AOL.com, or pick up the phone and give me a call, 216-539-7535. 216-539-7535. Hit us up. Let me know what you guys think here as we continue on throughout the day. Mike Brandenberry is going to come up. We've got news and Mike just about 10 minutes from now, and we've got BJ Riddell. If you're looking for your fantasy football for winners, BJ will be with us here just about 1 hour from now. If you're listening on digital delay, get you all set with who to start and who to sit and all of that. I'm going back to the Browns here. I'm not done just quite yet as I look through and think about the ways that the Browns, and even taking the quarterback out of the equation. I mean, really, to me, the defense, and I think back this week, is listening yesterday to Jim O'Neill talk about his defense and what they've done this week to bounce back. That is one thing. I think that here's the thing. Think about the way people were looking at the Browns heading into the season, heading into training, even as you were seeing things throughout training camp and throughout the preseason. This is an over-adjustment. Now, it is not an over-adjustment. It is not an overreaction. It is not spur of the moment to think that the Browns have a bad offense, because we thought that the Browns were going to have a bad offense back in March, and we knew that they were going to have a bad offense in July and in August and throughout the preseason. And nothing that they did led us to believe that the offense was going to be this stuff of champions. They aren't eating their Wheaties no matter how hard they try this season. So there's no reason to be, the world is, my opinion on the Browns offense has not changed one bit from before game one. And my point is that you can't say the same for the Browns defense, because there are and were not just expectations, but things that you saw on the field in those meaningless preseason games and in training camp. And my thoughts are this: that is somewhere that I do believe people are overcorrecting, and I do believe people are overreacting. This is not the purple people eaters. This is not the steel curtain. This is not the doomsday defense. This isn't even the dog defense of the late 80s teams there. But this is not a team with just this awful defense that's going to get wiped around. Again, think of what I said earlier, the way the quarterback play really affected how that game, I mean, they ran away from it late because you just gave yourself no opportunity offensively, and then that defense just got piled up on. Same thing here. All I'm saying is that's one place that I do believe people have been apt this week to overcorrect. And I do think that the defense will correct some of those deficiencies that you saw in the first game, and I do believe that you'll see a much better performance. Again, I go back to last season when they opened up at home. That defense, they made some. Remember, Mike Pettin put his defense out on the field right away to show that belief in them, and they came through and they played a hell of a game. All I'm saying is that I do believe this isn't just a defense that is waiting to prove itself. They made some huge strides last year. You did see them week by week. So that's where I say when everything changes in 1 week, that is more apt to be an overreaction than when it's already something you knew. That just kind of confirmed it. This offense is not turning around in a week, and I don't care if Joe Montana comes out of retirement. I said Joe Montana. Never mind. Anyways, when he comes back, it doesn't matter. That would still be not enough to change the Browns' offensive hopes. But defensively, I just believe that if there is an overreaction, it's on that side of the ball, and the Browns will definitely. And hey, you know what? I'm interested to see how they react to a rookie quarterback over there on the other side as well, because I continue to remind you that I like that kid over on the other sidelines too, but he was beaten up on the Tampa Bay Bucks. And just keep that in mind. The Bucks, if you think that the Browns are a bad football team, then there's a whole nother level of bad, and it's where the Bucks reside. It's on that other level of bad. So just be real about things here, man. And I think you'll see that as well come to play. That being said, I still don't think that the Browns have enough to win this game. I do think that they did. I don't think that they do, and I think that the deficiency is going to come at the quarterback position. The offense is just going to be unable to consistently get anything going. I believe the defense stays strong, guys. I really do. For 3 quarters of this, and much like last week, you start to see. I think there's a 17, 13, 14, 13-ish feel. Browns right in that area through 3 quarters, but 14, 17 points in the fourth quarter is what I see happening, and I think at that point you're looking at a score very similar to what you're looking at last week. I think you're looking at 28-14, 27-13, something in that area. The good guys going down. And guess what? That's why they play the games. That's why they do it and not just put it on paper and guys like me predicting it. They got to go out there and do it, and who knows, man. These guys might show up and be the doggone purple people eaters on Sunday. But that'll be a surprise and a pleasant one. That being said, I do expect the Browns defense to come out and start strong. I think they make up for last week. I think at the end, it may not look as good as it does because I do believe that they're going to get run down in the later stretches of that game, but we'll see how it plays out. That being said, it's not looking good to start. Oh, hey, I will say this. I picked up the new Madden 16. You guys know me. I'm a Madden guy, and I did yesterday. Finally, it took me a couple of weeks because I've been so busy. Yesterday, I finally got my hands on Madden 16, got the rosters all updated, dove into the season. Browns simulated out the first week, and very much like the first week, they lost 27-10 to the Jets in the first week. However, if you're looking for something to hang on to, the Browns took care of some business against the Titans. The Browns won a very hard-fought 17-14 game against the Tennessee Titans. The Crow, he only averaged 3 yards, 2.8 a carry, but he had about 30 of those carries and sluggishly helped the Browns hold on and win that one. Mariota threw not 1, but 2 fourth-quarter interceptions to seal the game, and Dante Whitner had 3 interceptions as the Browns got the upset. And then Well, they proceeded to lose the next week to Oakland and started the season 1-2. But that's next week's problem. But if you're looking for something to hang your hat on in the electronical world, Madden thinks the Browns are going to win this weekend, and maybe you do too. I want to hear from you. 216-539-7535. You'll have to leave it on the hotline because we're going to get some news, and when we get back, Mike Brandenberry is going to join us from didthethribewinlastnight.com. We're going to talk some Indians. We're going to talk some more Browns and Buckeyes here in a little bit, but I want to talk something football related with Mike when we come back. Did you guys see Good Morning America, those clown kids from the Texas football debacle? They hit the ref. I'm curious. I'll bring it up with Mike. He's a teacher. We're going to talk about that when we come back. But somebody allowed them to go on national TV and just tell the world, hey, it's not our fault. What society do we live? We don't take accountability for anything. But we love to hold the Browns accountable. Well, no, then again, they don't hold them accountable half the time either. But you know what I'm saying. We'll hold certain things accountable till the end, and then other things will. I'm telling you. You can walk away from anything nowadays if you just go on TV and say it was somebody else's fault. Meanwhile, you and me, regular cats like us, something you did 15 years ago still haunts you to this day, can't get away from it, but world, and go on national TV and ask for forgiveness. And then it's like bad if people don't forgive you. I've got to get a new agent. We'll talk about that when we come back. Mike Brandenberry is going to join us. We're talking some Texas football players. We're talking Indians. Trevor Bauer heading to the bullpen as the Indians try to chase down the wild card. Don't forget, B.J. Riddell joining us, fantasy football for winners and more. But coming up next after the news, Mike Brandenberry joins us. Do not go anywhere. The Sports Fix rolling on, baby.
Get your fix.
Because it's Friday, you ain't got no job, and you ain't got to do.
It's the Sports Fix. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, before we go to the break, I want to talk to you a little bit again about our good friends at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championships, some of the hottest fights in the world today. Each and every one of their huge events, Harry Buffalo is one of the few places in Northeast Ohio you can go there and watch each and every UFC fight at the Harry Buffalo. And let me tell you, I've been there. The people are out the door. They are to the rafters. It is one of the craziest environments for some UFC fights. Wing Mondays, they've got great deals on wings and drinks, and every day of the week there's a different special, a different deal. And don't forget the Bison Burger, the unbelievable. It is the combination of a fantastic burger and eating healthy combined into one unbelievable sandwich. You have got to get a Bison Burger while you're there. So whatever you're looking for, whatever day of the week, Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sundays, there's something for you at the Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Check them out today. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
Man, do I love card night. You ready, boys? You got a king?
Go, fish that.
Oh, come on. This is WWE superstar Titus O'Neil. The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Learn more at 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Fantasy sports lovers, you put so much time, hard work, and effort into playing week to week that it quickly stops being a fantasy and starts getting real. And when the smoke clears, you want to show off those victories with a real prize. I mean, a really real prize. Nobody does that like Fantasy Jocks. The crew over at Fantasy Jocks have beautiful, high-quality, and heavy-duty championship belts, rings, trophies, and so much more for all your fantasy sports needs. There's literally only one place to go. FantasyJocks.com. Sports Fix listeners, do you tweet? So do we. So tweet with us 24/7 at the Sports Fix CLE. Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Harry Buffalo. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
News break.
I'm Christine Lisi. This just in. Packers right tackle Brian Bulaga won't be available Sunday night versus the Seahawks because of a knee injury. According to Coach Mike McCarthy, Bulaga will undergo further tests today. Chiefs running back Jamal Charles putting last night's loss on himself. Charles fumbled twice The second return for the game-winning touchdown by the Broncos' Bradley Roby with 27 seconds remaining. Charles said afterwards he was the reason they lost. In their first TV interview, the two San Antonio high school football players who blindsided an official during a game earlier this month told Good Morning America today they heard that official make racist remarks to black and Hispanic players on the field, and they were following orders from one of their coaches to hit the official. John Jay High School safeties Michael Moreno and Victor Rojas, who apologized for the incident, have been suspended from the team and school. They could face charges. The official, Robert Watts, has denied using any racial slurs. Baseball, Pirates shortstop Jung Ho Gung had knee surgery last night. He's out 6 to 8 months. Pittsburgh's 5 back of NL Central leading St. Louis. It leads the Cubs by 2 games for the first NL wild card.
If you're ready to buy a new car, there's just one last thing to do. Check with TrueCar. Just configure the car you want, see what others paid for it, and lock in guaranteed savings from TrueCar certified dealers. Download the TrueCar app today.
Hey Cleveland, this is Mo Williams, and you're listening to Sports Fix.
Welcome back to the Sports Fix. J-Rocc back with you here, getting into it. Mike Brandenberry going to join us from DidTheTribeWinLastNight.com here in just a minute. I'm glad that news played when it did, because that was actually one of the things in there that I was going to talk about here, and we're going to dive into that. Mike's with us. Thanks to you guys for being with us. The calls earlier in the first segment. I'll open the phones back up here in the back part of the show. It's going to get a little congested. We've got Mike on, and then BJ Riddell joining us next with Fantasy Football for Winners. I'll open the phones up in the back part of the show if anybody wants to get back in and talk some Browns as they prepare to open up the home slate of the season this weekend against the Tennessee Titans. Leave your take anytime, 24/7, 216-539-7535, or hit us up on Facebook and Twitter, facebook.com/thesportsfix. Tweet with us at The Sports Fix, CLE. As always, email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com. I'm getting ready to go to the phones here. We're going to get Mike Brandenberry in on the conversation, and I thought this would be an interesting and a perfect segue to kind of tie Mike in on this here as you're during the break. And I mentioned it before we hit the break that I wanted to talk about it. Those Texas high school football players from over there in the San Antonio area. Of course, Mike does some teaching as well. And if you missed the story this morning, they were on Good Morning America and basically just went on TV and laid the blame on everybody else. First, it was not their fault that they did what they did, which was blindside an official. I've never seen this before in my life in sports. I mean, just the officials facing, you know how football and the referee's looking at the quarterback and he's in the linebacker position, and these cats come from safety and cornerback, whatever, and just do a beeline right for the official. One dude spears him and takes him down. The other dude comes in like a missile and scuds him on the way down. And these just disgusting thug stuff right there. And these kids go get trotted out onto Good Morning America now, because this is what we do in society is everybody gets a chance to do whatever they want to do and then go apologize for it, and then if you don't allow them to move on, it's your fault. You're the hateful person. But these kids go out there today, if you didn't see it, and they blame everybody but themselves for what they did. They, number one, were only doing what they were told to do. Now the coaches told them specifically to go out here and hit these officials. Somebody had to teach them a lesson because of the bad calls during the game. Michael Moreno and Victor Rojas are these kids' names. They play for John Jay High School in San Antonio. And Moreno said on Good Morning America, one coach pulled me over and another player and said, "You need to hit him. You need to hit the ref. He needs to pay the price." I'm sorry. I could be wrong here. This thing could come out to be proven. But part of me has such a hard time believing that a high school football coach pulls a kid aside and tells him to do something that has never, up until this point, ever been done before. You just need to nail that referee, you know? And meanwhile, then they throw out excuse number 2, which is apparently this same referee who also blew every call in the game, also threw racial slurs out all over the game. This referee, who up until this point had never been accused of anything like this before, apparently picked this random Friday night to go to a football game and decide to start throwing racial slurs only at players on the other team, because there's not a mixed racial chemistry, I guess, on both teams. Must have been only one certain group of players that he was being racial towards. And these kids basically said they were strictly following orders, and then said they wouldn't tell what coach it was. We're not going to tell what coach it was. Whatever, man. This is ridiculous. And I was half tongue-in-cheek before the break when I said, I can get a parking ticket from 15 years ago, and if it in any way can still come back and bite me in the rear end now, it does. I get it. Everybody gets a second chance. But how many of us live in a world where you're still carrying baggage from things that you did in another lifetime, when you were a different person, when you had a different job, when you were in a different city, whatever it is? How many of us can never shake the demons as hard as you try and work from things in your past? And I'm not acting like we're bank robbers and we're, living in the Wild West, but you know what I'm saying. There's always those times that you go, man, really? Wow, that's still following me around, or we're still talking about that drama, or whatever it is. And then people can do like the most egregious things like this and trot out the apology. And now we're the ones that are unsensitive if we don't go, hey, you're right, kid. Somebody else told you to do it. You don't have a mind of your own. You don't have thoughts of your own. You don't know how to say no. Now if that I'll tell you what. Well, I could open up a whole nother can of worms, because I'm willing to bet there are certain things that teacher could have asked you to do that you wouldn't have had a problem saying no to, but somehow you didn't know how to act in that scenario. No, even if it's true, even if the coach is that much of a thug, it just allowed you to feel free to do the same thuggish behavior that you want to do. And that's why I want to bring Mike Brandenberry in on that, because Mike is a teacher in his fun life outside of being an incredibly entertaining sports writer, and I'm curious where he is on this. Let's get to the phones. Mike Brandenberry from DidTheTribeWinLastNight.com. Mike, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing good. I try to always take whatever you're talking about and have some kind of sarcastic, witty one-liner, but I don't have anything for that intro other than like a million deep thoughts.
But that's what I want, because I didn't know. Are you hip to this story here? I mean, I kind of caught some of the details.
Yeah. I've seen the video for weeks now since when it happened, and I would say the first thing that I think when I see it, I guess I think two things right away is, one, if I'm an adult in any shape or form, if I'm a parent or a teacher or a coach or a combination, to me, this is a good time to stop the teenagers that you're around, whether they're your own kids or the kids in your neighborhood or the team you coach or the school you work at or wherever. But this is a lesson that I think I preach more and more and more at school, that you were kind of touching on, is, there are eyes everywhere. Our world is not the world that it was 20 years ago or 30 or 40 years ago or God forbid 60 or 70 years ago. There is a camera everywhere. There's social media everywhere. And if you do something, I guarantee, before we even talk about, who's right, who's wrong, who's more wrong, I guarantee when those kids made the decision that they were going to drill that official, they never, ever, ever for a second thought that this would be something that would be talked about nationally. They never thought that they would be on Good Morning America. They never thought they'd have to be defending themselves. Maybe they thought they might get in trouble. I would say, just knowing teenagers in general, they probably didn't think much farther than that. But they certainly didn't think of the grand scope. And, in our technological world that we live in today, there is an eye and an ear everywhere. And, I tell kids that all the time. And I say, the way you don't get in trouble is always make good decisions. And again, before, we ever talk about, who said or did what, at the end, before any crime was committed, before any wrongdoing was created, those two boys made a decision on that field with their helmets on that they were going to, that in itself is a wrong decision. That's not in the spirit of the game. That's not the spirit of high school sports. That's not the spirit of sportsmanship in any way. And if those two boys were doing those things, if even the things that they've alleged, if everyone around them was as corrupt and dirty and racist as they all claim now, then why weren't they the bigger people? And why weren't they the ones that said, hey, this is wrong, I'm not going to stoop to that level? And that's, we teach our kids that, but to me, this is an excellent opportunity to point and say, look, these guys had no idea how this would snowball. And, you gotta be willing to walk away. You gotta be willing to do the right thing when people aren't doing the right thing around you. And that, I've not heard anyone bring that up, and I've not, to me, it's the thing that they are 100% guilty of that no one seems to want to convict them. There's no way you can argue against that. They should have walked the other way.
Oh, I absolutely agree. That's what, right before I brought you up, that was kind of what I was meaning when I said there's many a thing that even if everything they allege is true, that coach could have came over and whispered, hey, here's what I want you to do. I guarantee you, not every word that came out of his mouth, you'd have said, yeah, coach, I'm going to go do that. Clearly, you made a conscious decision to do something that you did not that you knew you should not have done. And again, I'll follow you up. You're on the front end of it. Go to the back end. Go to Good Morning America. Again, leave out whether or not all of these other parties acted the way they did. Following right up on your thing is, I'm talking to parents. I'm talking to all of the groups of advisors here that allowed these kids to then, regardless and independent of who did what during what, allow them on the back end to go out and say, well, this isn't my son's fault. This isn't my kid's fault. This isn't my fault because it was his fault and his fault and his fault and his fault. And this is why I'm not responsible for this, because, I'm not responsible for my own actions. And I'm thinking you're again doing such a disservice to these kids because A, it's already bad enough how it went down on the front end. And then here on the back end, you're teaching them right off the bat. It's that legality mode that we live in. It's self-preservation mode. It's lawyer up mode. It's all of that stuff, and it's passing the buck. What are you teaching these kids so that what? So that they can, screw up as adults and then again say, well, here's why it wasn't my fault this time. I just think what a disservice you're doing, because had it been, which again it wouldn't have been, but had it been my son, little Jerry's out there creaming officials on the field. End of the day, I don't care if he was handed a note from the coach telling him to do it. I'll deal with that. But you can bet that my son's on Good Morning America going, I made the worst decision of my life, and I apologize for what I did. These guys are asking for apologies while never admitting that they did anything worth apologizing for. They're saying, I was told to do it. It was his fault for saying things that he shouldn't have been saying, but we're sorry. Well, you can't be sorry for something that you think is not your fault.
Yeah, I agree. And I've never been a part of something like this, but I've been a teacher for 15 years. I was a head baseball coach at 2 different schools and coached varsity baseball for 12 years. When I say I could fill a show, Jerry, I could fill a month of shows of students who are unaccountable for themselves. That's in the classroom, on the field, and parents that either enable them or not so much even enable them, but create the situation where the kid believes that they're in the right, where I believe it's the parent that's wrong first and convinces the student that they don't have to be accountable for themselves. And, I think this is a fine example, I guess, without maybe turning my whole segment into this. I'm not really a big fan for as much time as I spend in schools and for as much time as I've spent coaching. I'm not really a big fan of it's not youth sports that I'm not a fan of. It's the glorification of it.
The culture.
I don't watch
know
the
what you're
Little League
saying.
World
Yeah,
Series.
I know what you're saying.
People talk about that and they try to tell me that they think that that's really cool and neat. I think it's awful. When I was a kid, the finals, when the U.S. versus, whatever the foreign team would be the only game that was ever on TV. Now, we have different communities in the same state playing each other that are on TV, and we have, Under Armour games, and there's more and more and more of all of it. I think it's awful. And I know I'm probably in a minority to say that, but
no.
I think it's awful, and I think it creates a lot more bad than good. And AAU tournaments, and I mean, I love the guy now, but I think a tipping point towards this direction was really when LeBron.
LeBron. Absolutely.
A lot of the high school area by storm. He was a high school student who became a national, figure or icon. And,
yes.
When he had games on ESPN, and then, to me, that was kind of a bigger tipping point towards that. But there's a number of examples. I mean, certainly not just, I don't think any of it's LeBron's fault, but I agree. I think it's network TVs and people that
signing
put
days,
that stuff
bro.
on TV.
National signing days. They trot these kids out here. They got 8th graders coming out here putting on high school hats now and showing what high school they're going to. They make whole 8-hour spectacles out of where these high school kids are going to college. And then they get mad when some of them change their mind 3 months later, because Lord forbid that a high school kid wasn't exactly sure how he wanted to shape the rest of his life at 15 or whatever, But that stuff is all part of what you're talking about. That culture of all of that, it becomes bigger than everything. I'm with you. It all we could do hours and hours on this stuff here.
Oh yeah, I could do a week on just experiences that I've been a part of myself. But I think the glorification of youth sports is in terms of sports, the sports world itself, the glorification of youth sports is one of the worst things that has happened in the last, I would say, 20 years.
I agree. And that LeBron example is one that I've pointed to a lot myself. When he's sitting there mocking the Athletic Association with his little remote control Hummer, that may play cute on sports talk radio, and it may be cute now to joke about it because he's got 57,000 Hummers of his own now in real life. But to me, it isn't cute at the time, and it's just like you said, it's kind of the beginning of that atmosphere.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it goes deep because, the fact of the matter is, and again, I was a coach for 12 years and I've been a teacher for 15. I've learned in that time that I would say 99% of the people that you meet, they know right from wrong. Everybody knows that those kids were wrong. Okay. And you'll look far and wide to find somebody that'll say, what those kids did, I understand. I think they had every right to. Okay. We all know that they're wrong, but I'll tell you, I've seen a lot of people when the 99% knows that those kids over there are wrong, stand and say, oh yeah, those kids are wrong. But when it's your kid, you're suddenly the 1%. And, it's, you made a comment, and I'm not saying that you're wrong, but you made the comment, if it was one of your kids, they'd be on Good Morning America apologizing and saying it's the biggest mistake of their life. Well, I can tell you that there's a whole lot of people that are saying that today, and they won't all back it up. They just don't. I can just tell you.
Listen,
I can just
brother,
tell you from 15 years. There's a whole lot of parents that defend their kids to a fault. And, I would stand right in line with you and tell you that I would do the same. But when it becomes your kid, you get blinded.
I agree, but here's how much I can stand by what I'm saying. And you know what? I'll put this out here. I don't care.
I believe you. I'm just saying in general.
Let me just tell you this, though. This will just tell you. There was an incident a few years ago where my older son and a couple of his compadres had decided that they wanted to remove some merchandise from a store without paying for it. And Dad found out about it. Nobody else found out about it. Dad found out about it. Dad took his ass to the store and made him walk up to the security guard and tell him what he did. And guess what? Guess where Dad got that from? Because when Dad was 9 years old, Dad got caught removing a G.I. Joe from a discount drug mart without paying for it. And guess what his dad did? My dad marched my ass to the store and let them pretend to arrest me to teach me my lesson. And I can tell you for a fact that I never, ever, ever considered shoplifting again. And when my son, at the age of 12, was in the same situation, I did the exact same thing that my dad did to me. And as far as I know, my son has never shoplifted again. But I'm just saying, that's God's honest truth, and that's the kind of that's my belief in it.
I believe
if I
you.
don't,
like I said, I mean,
but you know what
I'm not
saying?
saying that I
don't believe
question
that the
you,
world,
but I'll tell you, I've run into a number of parents. I mean, I had a parent a year ago or a couple years ago on a baseball team. I was a new coach to the program, and they, everybody has stories about the old coach and the way things used to be and what they liked and didn't like. Believe me, I've heard them all. And I had a parent, tell me, you'll never hear me complain about playing time. I just want my son to have a fair shake. And he was a senior, and he made the team. And after we played 3 games, he wasn't a starter, and he hadn't played very much. And after 3 games, he quit, which I think is, as a parent, my opinion, you don't let a kid quit something in the first place. But Dad was all for it. The same one who said, you'll never hear me complain about playing time. He let him quit. And his answer was, well, if he's not going to start, then, he shouldn't have to waste his time,
no way.
So, one story obviously doesn't match the other. And that's kind of what I mean. There's a lot more of those out there than people ever want to admit. And I really believe,
you're right.
People say those things and they mean them and they mean the right thing. They know right from wrong all the time. But when your kid gets involved, I believe a lot of people become blind and, they don't look at the greater picture,
It's so
and I'm
funny.
sure there were a lot of people standing around going, man, I can't believe that kid quit because he hasn't played very much in 3 games. We got 25 more games to go. Who knows what could happen? But he's not the first or last kid to ever quit a team, and he's not the first or last kid to, have his parents condone it. But people always know right from wrong. And I think, when your children get involved, we all know what's right and wrong, but there's a lot of us, the waters get muddy at times when your children get involved, and it's not always a good muddy, if there is such a thing. I mean, you talk about, those people, their parents and the people around them, nobody's, instead they're making it.
Mike, I agree with everything you're saying. My belief, and this is the way my dad raised me, and it's the way I was raised. And I have a saying for it. You can call me, Buddha if you want, but I believe that it is much easier to teach your kids a couple of hard lessons than it is 1,000 soft lessons, because I know from experience. I think back now, 30 however many years later, and I think back to my life, and I think of all the lessons that I was taught, all the experiences, and which ones didn't. And brother, it was the hard ones that it was stuck, and it was the ones that my dad bailed me out on that I've always kept that into effect. And my dad was the king of, I don't have to be your friend, but we'll be friends later, thanks to the way I'm raising you now. And he was so right about that, because my dad was my best friend up until about 15 or 16. We were not good friends for the next 5 or 6 years, and then he was my best friend for the rest of the run. You know what I mean?
Because, I agree, and I think a lot of what you're saying, I tell kids all the time, you think you're invincible. Everybody believes they're invincible until they're proven they're not. And
yep.
And the thing is, it will bite you at a certain point. And some of us are lucky you don't find out that you're invincible, for a while. And others, unfortunately, the world's not as even as we'd all like it to be. And some people find out that they're not invincible much quicker than others. And I always think, once you accept that you're not invincible, the way you treat yourself and other people around you totally changes. And I mean, I say that for myself. I was lucky. I mean, I'll be the first to admit I had a great childhood growing up. I had 2 parents that are still happily married. I literally walked across the street to school. I never moved. I was never the new kid. As a teacher to this day, I always am thankful. The school district I started kindergarten in is the one I got my high school diploma in. And, I would never pretend that I've never done anything wrong, but I've never broken any laws that are attached to my name. If you Google me or run my record or anything, and but I'll tell you, and because of all that, your invincibility goes farther and farther and farther, and you see things that happen around you, and you're like, oh, that won't happen to me. That won't happen to me. And I mean, just from my own life, I mean, I have a brother-in-law that was killed in Iraq in 2005. He was the same age as me, 8 months older. And, that was the end of my invincibility. And you think about it, I lived till I was 25 and thought I was pretty invincible. That's pretty arrogant in itself right there. And that's pretty lucky. But that changes a lot of things for you. And, these kids are going to learn that they're not invincible out of this one way or another, even with the people around them, maybe, not giving them the best advice. But something tells me the next time someone gives them some bad advice, they'll think about it a little longer before they go spearing other people.
Good way to wrap that up. I agree with you. With me, it was 26 when my grandmother passed away. She was the first really close relative that I had that passed away. That was when, I could use that exact same term as you, that was when that invincibility was shattered. And then, oh, hell, it was one thing after another at that point. And all of a sudden you go, damn, what kind of world did I just wake up in? Now all of a sudden it's flipped the other way for a while. But you get control of it. You keep it going, and you know what I'm saying. Hey, let's tie this thing around while we got 5-10 more minutes here. And plus you did a good job of stalling yourself off of the inevitable. I'm gonna make you do it. For the next 10 minutes, I'm gonna make you pretend that the Indians are 4 games out of the wild card with 18 left to play, and anything can happen. Can you give me that? Can we go in that direction?
We can go in that direction. I don't
you
think
hate
you're going
me
to
right now.
You they're a real
me.
playoff team. I think 2 weeks ago when I was on, I said, call me when they are above 500. And to the best of my knowledge, you didn't call me for the 3 hours during Game 2 of the Tigers game last Sunday.
I know.
So they're still not really in it. That was your one window to get a hold of me.
I was joking on Wednesday. I said they got to win out till Friday so I could really have a leg to stand on here with Mike because, I mean, I'll tell you what, Houston just continues to free fall as they are really what's allowed, not just the Indians, but the Twins and the Angels to stay in this thing, and that's pretty much where it is. You got the Tribes 4 back, the Angels are 3 back, and the Twins, are they 1 or are they a half a game back? I'm not sure what the late night result was last night.
I think they're 1 back.
Yeah,
I think they're 1 back, but I could be wrong.
Thing, Mike,
I mean,
the
door's open, but I mean, the door is open.
Here's
but
what I was
mean,
it's
the same thing we've talked about all year. They still have a number of teams to leap. I mean, if they were just chasing the Astros and they were 4 back, I would tell you they have a lot better shot. But the Angels are there, the Twins are there.
Well, that's the thing, though.
Passing
the Twins,
all 3 of them is going to be really difficult. I know they play the Twins like 7 times. That's nice, but they don't play the Astros and they don't play the Angels. I think it's going to be very difficult. It's not impossible. They're certainly playing better baseball than they have at any point in this year. To me, I mean, not to script our shows for the next 6 months, but this season is exactly the same as last season. And it's why all the games count and why you can't bury yourself in April and May. And, And if you remember, a year ago when we talked about, what kind of Carlos Carrasco would we see moving forward, I said, he's going to have to show me for another year. That's kind of how I feel about Lonnie next year, and in the next 17, 18 games. We've seen flashes from some of these guys before, and I'll say that for the Indians as a whole. I mean, we've seen flashes that this is a really good team. But honestly, in the Terry Francona era, that's really all we've seen is flashes. And they can come out and tell me all winter how great they played in September. And I've seen it before. They're going to have to come out and show me that they're a real team for a while.
No, I was just saying, trust me, they will tell you for the next 3 months how well they did at the end of the season, as you know.
Oh,
and I'm totally with you.
I could write their press releases for them. I just scratch out 2014 and write in 2015. They're going to tell us all the same stuff.
I'll tell you what, speaking of press releases, let's jump in right there. One of the things they announced here in the last 24 hours for whatever's left of the rest of the season, barring injury, Trevor Bauer moved to the bullpen and taken out of the rotation. Does that surprise you at all?
A little bit. It surprises me because he's just, for as quirky as he is, I can't see him being a reliable bullpen pitcher. I mean, you can't go through the routine that he has to get ready to pitch out of the bullpen. That doesn't work. For a guy who, we can make the argument, does he think too much? That's very well possible. But for a guy like that, who I'm sure goes through, more of a mental checklist than we could ever imagine to get ready to get out on the mound, again, he can't do all of that. And I just wonder if, Trevor Bauer, like several other guys, if this is just what he is. What he reminds me of is Ubaldo Jimenez 2.0. You get a whole bunch of starts that make your stomach hurt, and you get 3 or 4 in a row that makes you think, oh my God, the light bulb has gone on and here we go. And, we saw a lot of that light bulb on, here we go in the first half, and we've had a whole lot of stomach ache in the second half. And I can't see him. I'm surprised because I can't see him being effective in the bullpen.
No.
Whatever level of in it they are, I can't see him really pitching very many meaningful innings while they're in it.
And I mean,
if he's mopping up when it's 8-2, whatever. But I mean, I think when they're really out of it, you'll see him right back in the rotation. This is a move because they don't trust him.
Oh, absolutely. Terry Francona pretty much spelled that out and said, we have to win as many games as we can. And I mean, really, Bauer said it the other night, and his quote kind of strikes back to me when he said, when I'm bad, I don't even give us a chance. Like, I don't even give us a chance to win on my bad nights.
Oh, yeah. There's no argument there. And
he's right.
Probably a conversation for this winter, but, there are pieces of this team that unless somebody comes in and offers you Babe Ruth, there are pieces of this team that you're not parting with. There are pieces on this team that you'd like to see go away. And then there are pieces on this team that you'd prefer to have around, but if you could convince somebody to give you more than what could fill some other holes maybe for you, or give you more than what you think they're worth, you would quickly part with them. And I think Trevor Bauer falls into that third category.
Yes,
I don't think they're actively out shopping him or with the plan to shop him this winter, but I think he's worn thin with them at times. I don't think it's a secret anymore that he and Mickey Callaway do not have a very good relationship. I can tell you that that's not new. I mean, I've known that for a while. And I forget what Terry Francona's comment was yesterday. Their relationship is always evolving. That's a fancy way for me to hear that they don't get along very well.
Yes, exactly. That is so funny you said that, because that tied into all these things that you just mentioned to me, I was telling this to somebody yesterday. I said, I'm going to see what Mike thinks about this. I said, to me, I know this has happened before, and then guys don't always get traded, but this really signals to me that Bauer's time with the Indians has just about come to an end, because I believe had those relationships been better that you're talking about with Callaway, with Francona, that had the Indians had more, maybe he doesn't get sent to the bullpen down the stretch here, even if it is to follow the hope of whatever remaining games are left. And I think that this is a lot like dropping Michael Bourne from the top of the lineup finally, doing some of those things that when you go, if you look a little deeper, you can read the language and see what they're saying and go, you know what? I think they've made a decision here, and we just haven't been privy to it. And I think that this may be the opening of that door, that he is definitely one that they're willing to part ways with this winter.
It's possible, but I'll tell you, I think the door is open to moving him, but I'll tell you, I'll be stunned if they can get value or what the majority would perceive as, above value, because he's a guy with a reputation that doesn't get along with coaches. He's,
very interesting
third pitching coach that he doesn't get along with. And, to make matters worse, don't ever forget Charles Nagy was his pitching coach in Arizona. And, if Mickey Callaway can't get along with them, they already have someone who spent time with them who might be able to explain how this guy ticks. And, it's not making any difference. So, there's a better chance that Charles Nagy behind closed doors is saying, yeah, this is all the same stuff we saw in Arizona, and the problem is that that's around baseball. That's the reputation that he carries. And so, they may be able to move him, but I'm not sure that he's going to bring back, a key piece that makes the 2016 Indians better. If you want to dump them, they'll be able to, and they might be able to get back some value, but I don't think you'll be saying, well, we have fill in the blank for Trevor Bauer. Man, our center field problems are solved now. I don't think that's going to happen.
I hear you there, man, and that's something to talk about, all that winter stuff. We got a couple weeks of me driving you crazy. I talk about you when you're not here, by the way. Your ears should be ringing. Like Monday, when I was starting to talk a little wild card chase, I'm like, boy, Mike Brandenberry is destroying his mobile device right now if he's listening to us, because he's hearing me say these words and throwing it against the wall. But
I'll tell you. I'll tell you. Most days when I'm in school now, I don't listen to the show. But I run in the evening, and a lot of times I go on long runs, and I listen to your show. And when you say things like that, it has an effect on my running. Sometimes I get angry, and that forces me to run farther, or depending on where you say it in the show. I know I'm only like a mile from home, so sometimes it makes me run faster, because if I can get home, then I don't have to hear things like that anymore. So you're really a good motivating force for me at times.
I love it. Well, they got the White Sox this weekend, and they've pretty much got to sweep them for me to continue to drive you nuts next week. You got Anderson, you got Carrasco, and Tomlin taking the mound for the Indians. What do you think? Have the White Sox packed up their ship just yet? Should the Indians be able to get something done this weekend?
The White Sox have played with pride this week, and
they have
kind of put something together. So, I think if the Indians think they're in it, it's a must-sweep. It's not a must-win series. Yes. It's a must-sweep. So,
I agree.
So we'll see. Hey, I got to run.
My man, we'll talk about it next week, and we'll see what you guys are up to on didthetribewinlastnight.com.
Thanks a lot, man.
You got it. Mike Brandenberry, the man. Check him out. Didthetribewinlastnight.com. They'll be writing articles all week about the, what does he call it, pretension, about the wild card chase, doggone it, and we'll continue to talk about it next week. It's the Tribe and the Sox. I'll go through that some more when we come back. We've got plenty of sports fix left to go. Let's hit the break and come back and shift back over to the gridiron. We'll talk fantasy gridiron, fantasy football. BJ Riddell joins us next. We'll talk for about 15 minutes about fantasy football, who you should sit, who you should start. We've got plenty on top of that. Buckeyes, NIU. Why are the Buckeyes at more risk than people think? We'll talk about that. So much more still to come. Don't go anywhere when we come back. BJ Riddell, fantasy football for winners, and more as the Sports Fix rolls on, baby.
I can hear you.
And now, a very special announcement from the Sports Fix.
Black bears weigh between 200 and 500 pounds. Brown bears weigh between 300 and over 1,000 pounds. Black bears run away from you. Brown bears run at you. When attacked by a bear, simply lie still on the ground and cover your face and head with your hands. When the bear is finished batting you around and mauling you, contact the U.S. Forest Service.
And that was a message from the Sports Fix.
It's the Sports Fix. We'll be right back.
Football season is party season at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted. And no matter who you root for, everyone wins at Harry Buffalo. Every Saturday is Coors Light College Football Saturday with $6 pitchers, 4 bottles for $10, and the Buckeyes in full HD. Every Sunday, the Sports Fix is broadcasting live with giveaways and prizes and joining you in watching all the Browns action with Bud Light beer specials and $10 hair of the dog pitchers.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs and have some fun.
Plus, every Monday night, catch the Monday Night Football action with some of your favorite Browns players. Football season is most definitely party season, and your headquarters is Harry Buffalo North Olmsted all winter long. Harry Buffalo. Join the herd. Fantasy sports lovers, you put so much time, hard work, and effort into playing week to week that it quickly stops being a fantasy and starts getting real. Real time spent making real decisions, creating real victory.
I'm the greatest man in the world.
And when the smoke clears, you want to show off those victories with a real prize.
I mean, a really real prize.
Nobody does that like Fantasy Jocks. The crew over at Fantasy Jocks have beautiful, high-quality, and heavy-duty championship belts, rings, trophies, and so much more for all your fantasy sports needs.
The trophy's 12 feet high, and it is glorious.
Football, baseball, hoops, you name it, they have it. Plus, they have awesome draft kits and party supplies to make all your preseason activities the envy of everyone. If your league needs a ring, belt, or trophy, or you want to upgrade what you already have, there's literally only one place to go. If you're going to be a fantasy jock, do it right.
It's mine, the most magnificent belt ever created, and it's mine.
With America's fantasy sports superstore, FantasyJocks.com.
This is head coach Gary Waters at Cleveland State, and you're listening to the Sports Fix.
Welcome back to the Sports Fix Live as we roll on. J-Rocc back with you here. BJ Riddell's going to join me just a couple minutes from now. We're going to do fantasy football for winners and go through this week 2 in the NFL, who you should sit, who you should start, and all of those good things. And many of you, by the way, taking place in our fantasy league, week 2 underway. The Sports Fix Fantasy Football Challenge, brought to you by Fantasy Jocks, America's fantasy sports superstore. Make sure you check them out, FantasyJocks.com. And remember, the winner of the Sports Fix Fantasy Challenge is going to walk away with that championship belt, custom championship belt from the good folks over there at FantasyJocks.com. So we'll continue to talk about it next week. Well, Monday, when we get back, we'll see who did what here this week. Speaking of, I can't wait for BJ to join us because if you're like me, you're that guy somewhere in the top 6 or 7 picks of your draft, or at least 2 of your drafts, that took, oh boy, C.J. Anderson from the Denver Broncos, who early on is not cooperating very well, man. I mean, I think he got me 2.5 points last week, another 2.5, maybe 3 points this week. My man not cooperating early on. And I know they're getting used to a new offense there and all of that stuff. And boy, by the way, speaking of, while I got a minute, real football, not just fantasy football, looking at the game last night, you guys watched that, Denver and Kansas City. Does it just seem like there's not that comfort level yet for Peyton Manning? I mean, unless I'm wrong, that's a different offense. He's not calling everything himself like he was. They've got much more organizational control over the offense there. That's not the offense, the way Peyton Manning is used to running his offense and doing that. That being said, doesn't mean that it can't turn into something very effective. I think it's going to be Peyton's a very, very cerebral, very mental type quarterback, as you guys know. So I have no doubt that come week 8, week 10, I think that's when that Denver offense starts to really get humming and kicking and then building themselves some steam for the playoff run there. But and that defense, they now have a defense, which is going to definitely make a difference there. And anyways, but, so that's why I'm not totally panicking. But as soon as BJ joins us, I'm going to ask the question for those of you like me that have got 2 weeks in a row here with old CJ not contributing too much on the field. But how about it last night? Late comeback for the Broncos. I mean, they get 2 touchdowns in less than a minute there. I mean, Jamal Charles is wearing the GOAT helmet today, that's for sure. Because he was the GOAT last night. As the touchdown to tie, and you're thinking, okay, here comes overtime. But the Chiefs, instead of settling and saying we want overtime, they said, hell, we got enough time to make a drive. First play, boom, puts the ball on the ground, does Jamal Charles. And look at that, Denver flips it around and gets the victory, 31-24, as they jump on there ahead of the Kansas City Chiefs. Rivalry game there, always kicking off the slate of games. I'm looking around the rest of the NFL. Of course, we've talked a bit, and we'll talk more here, Browns and Titans. But looking around, you got Houston and Carolina. Looks like Ryan Mallett's going to get the start. Brian Hoyer already in jeopardy well, not in jeopardy. He has, at least for now, lost the starting job. I think they were very intrigued by that fourth quarter that Mallett had, and they want to see what he can do here against Carolina. San Francisco and Pittsburgh, that should be an interesting matchup there. San Francisco, telling you, Carlos Hyde in week 1 showed all you guys out there, and I love you guys in the Sports Fix universe, but there's that half of you Cleveland fans that I talk to all the time that are if they wore a Buckeye on their helmet, if they were an OSU guy, you don't want them. And I told y'all you were wrong about Carlos Hyde. And I mean, and what's so funny is all the same cats that didn't want Carlos Hyde now want Cardale Jones. And I'm like, man, could you at least pick the right Buckeye to take? Y'all wanted Brian Robisky. I'm just kidding about him. I don't know who actually wanted Brian Robisky. I sure didn't. But after I saw him play, I wanted him even less. But anyways, Carlos Hyde is the real deal, and he's the one that should be. He should be here right now, by the way, playing some football here. It was right there, laid out. The Browns passed him once, twice, 3 times, my lady. I mean, Anyways, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Saints should get off the schneid there. I don't think Tampa Bay is going to win a game all weekend long. Detroit and Minnesota, divisional battle there. Both teams looking to get their first win of the season. Arizona, I expect them to go to 2-0 on Chicago. New England and Buffalo, marquee matchup this weekend. I mean, obviously, can Buffalo do to the great Tom Brady and Patriots offense what he did to the Indianapolis Colts and Andrew Luck last week? Is Buffalo the real deal? Early season test there. San Diego and Cincinnati. I'd like to see that one because those are both teams that I think are going to be right there in the playoff hunt. And obviously the Browns have both of those teams on their schedule. Atlanta and the Giants. I think the Falcons get the win in that one there. Giants. Who knows though? Defensively, I think they could throw some fits on the Falcons. Julio Jones is on another level right now. St. Louis, I think they continue to be a surprise for the league. Matter of fact, I grabbed Nick Foles in one of my fantasy leagues here, and I'm actually going to go with him this week against Washington as a streaming starter, even though I'm confident with my guy. But anyways, Miami and Jacksonville, Dolphins defense looks to continue to roll here. They go to 2-0. Baltimore, Oakland. Ravens should get off the schneid. Oakland's a mess. Dallas and Philly, an intriguing matchup. I think Dallas takes that one. Seattle and Green Bay is the big one. It'll be very interesting to see how that game goes down there. Can the Seattle defense, they had their trouble with the Rams, even though they scored a bunch of fantasy points. Green Bay is the best fantasy offense in the history of fantasy football. That'll be interesting. And then the Jets and the Colts on Monday night. That's real football. Let's talk fantasy football. Fantasy football for winners. All of these games will be affected, of course, by that. And let's do it. BJ Riddell with us now on the hotline. BJ, how you doing, my man?
Hey, good, J-Rocc. How are you doing?
Fantastic, man. Just kind of looking around these games here as I got ready to bring you up. It's going to be on the field, real-life football. Going to be some interesting games. I'm telling you, I'm looking forward to that Buffalo New England matchup most definitely, and Seattle and Green Bay. For each conference, you've got potential championship game previews there.
That's right. That's right. Those are the two that people should be focusing on from fantasy and a real perspective. Fantasy-wise, is Buffalo's defense going to be as good as it was last year? They've got a much tougher schedule this year. They only have about 4 really good matchups and a bunch of medium and very, very tough matchups. And this is one of the big tests. I think they've only won a handful of games against New England over the years, in the Brady era, and this will be a statement game. Green Bay, I'm an outlier on this, but I think Green Bay is going to stomp Seattle. I'm not from Green Bay. I have no reason to say that. What happened last year in the conference finals was a championship game was just ridiculous. They blew what was an 11-point lead with 5 minutes left with the ball. That just doesn't happen. That definitely doesn't happen when you've got a team as experienced and capable as the Packers, but it did. And I feel like the Packers have had this game circled since the schedule came out, and I think they're going to really crush Seattle. I think it's going to be something along the lines of 30-7. The defense is good, pretty underrated for Green Bay, and I think it's just one of those cases where Green Bay has the momentum because they're pissed. And Seattle, I think, is a little bit confused over what happened last week with St. Louis. It shouldn't have been that close a game. Cam Chancellor's holding out. They don't have the same defense that they had last year, and the offense is still trying to figure out who's the go-to guy. Is it Jimmy Graham? Is it Stephen Baldwin? It's still Marshawn Lynch on the ground, but it's Tyler Lockett, the young star. I think until they figure out how their team makeup is, at least with Green Bay, even without Jordy Nelson, it's still the same Packers team, and I think they're going to have a workmanlike attitude in destroying Seattle this weekend.
I'm with you. I'll tell you what, in my one league, I'm kind of handcuffed, and I have to go with Seattle because it's a rather deeper league. But I benched Seattle's defense in all of my other fantasy leagues, and I went with streaming defenses in each of them because I just know I do believe in Seattle long term, and they've got some good matchups. But this isn't one of them, and I will gladly bench. I don't care. In my one league, I took them high. You saw that, but. You got to do what you got to do. I'm not trying to lose a game now just to be stubborn and prove that I was right.
That's right. And some of your listeners might be dealing with this issue. I was just talking to a guy on email with this very issue of they have Seattle's defense. What do they do this weekend? And it has to be a cost-benefit analysis. You have to look at it and say, all right, how deep is your bench? Let's say you got 5 bench spots. Do you drop someone who's pretty capable, let's say a top 30 receiver, top 35 receiver, because you're desperate to get that better defense? And the answer is, Seattle might get you 2 points this week, realistically, I think. A defense off waivers might get you 8. So is it really worth dropping anyone to get 6 more points this week in a league where maybe 90 points usually win? Is that 6 points going to make or break you? And is it worth dropping someone that you might need later on, especially during bye weeks when people are dropping and picking up people sometimes just to make rosters work? So my approach, my recommendation to people is if you've got a really deep bench or if you've been looking to drop someone anyway, drop someone, pick up someone better this week, better position to get you 6-8 points, and you can take away an extra 4 to 6 points out of it. But don't give up anyone that you think you might be starting in the next few weeks.
All right, BJ, I had a question before you called in. I said when he gets here, this is my first question, but I'm definitely not the only person 2 games in now for Denver that has this question. In 2 of my leagues, I used a high draft pick on one C.J. Anderson, and clearly the first 2 weeks of the season have not been. And again, I was saying right before you called that I believe in general with the changes to this Denver offense and with Peyton running a new offense that it'll probably be 8-10 weeks into the season before Peyton's a smart quarterback. He'll figure out how to make this thing work and he'll get comfortable with it, but it'll be midway towards the later part of the season before they're really getting humming as an offense. What do you think? But what do people do who took C.J. Anderson top 6, top 7 like most people did?
Yeah, and you know what? I'm one of them. I had C.J. Anderson in one of my leagues, and I picked Hillman at the end, towards the end, and this was an earlier draft before C.J. Anderson was even, came up gimpy, earlier in the preseason. You want to have Hillman obviously as a backup, but even that is not the answer. Hillman is not going to be an every down back taking over unless C.J. Anderson goes on the shelf. As long as Anderson is still capable of getting out there on the field, he's the best running back in that backfield. He is a difference maker. He helped some people last year win the title when going into the season, they may not have had a number 2 running back and they walked away with a clear-cut number 1. So my attitude is, I agree with you. It might take some time for this offense to gel. They might have to sit Anderson for a game and just let him heal. But the promising sign for Anderson is that Hillman is not doing that well without him. He's getting, 9 carries for 38 yards or something like that. That's fine. It's not going to be enough to take over. It's not like Hillman's got 12 rushes for 100 yards and a touchdown where people have to say, oh, okay, I guess we need to go with a hot hand and stick with Hillman. Hillman's doing adequately, which is to be expected. It's all just, laying the groundwork and waiting for Anderson to come back. So I would encourage people who don't have Anderson, trade for him and then stash him, wait till the injury heals so it looks like he's got one good game under his belt, and then get him out there. But he's too good to ignore at this point.
All right, cool. That makes me feel better. Now, I got a trade request in one of my leagues for a guy, and I'm going to throw this name out there because I'm curious if this is should I sell high? Because I think this guy's just going to be money all season long. But I got an email that said, hey, what do you want for Keenan Allen? I'm interested in trading. And I'm just curious if there's other people that right now, is that a situation where it may be a time to entertain something? Or is he going to be, I think he's money all season long.
Yeah, he is money. But my attitude is there's a price for everyone. I'm willing to trade anyone if the price is right. And Keenan Allen was my, I think he was 13th ranked receiver going into the season. I had him ahead of Randall Cobb, which a lot of people thought was nuts, and some people told me that. But this was before Cobb was hurt. I was telling people that Keenan Allen is a real deal. Ignore last year. He's a 1,200-yard, 8-touchdown guy, and that's it. End of story. What he did last week is what he'll be doing a lot of weeks. He's not going to get 17 targets, but he's good for 80 yards every week, and he's good for a score a majority of the weeks. So what I would say is if you're going to get someone of comparable value, a top 12 receiver for him, maybe even a Calvin Johnson, I would strongly consider, I would probably do, I would take Calvin Johnson for Keenan Allen because I feel like Calvin Johnson is more uniquely capable of big games than Keenan Allen. Detroit runs on Calvin Johnson. San Diego doesn't run on Keenan Allen. They've got a lot of weapons. It just happens to be Allen is the clear-cut number 1. Calvin Johnson is what makes Detroit go. So I would accept that kind of trade, but I wouldn't accept a trade for, I'm trying to think. I wouldn't accept Terrence Williams, who I love, by the way. I love his preseason. He was my 24th ranked receiver, I think, heading into the season. This is back when Dez was fully healthy. But I still would not accept a guy like Terrence Williams, whose value now is sky high for Keenan Allen. It has to be someone who is a credible RB1 or WR1 caliber guy.
And that's what I was thinking is I've got Calvin Johnson, and on the bench I've got John Brown as well. I've got a couple of other receivers. I'm thinking I may look at a running back, so I'm curious who I may get. I was just curious about.
Just remember, and just keep in mind that running backs fade far more often than receivers fade. You will see a bunch of running backs replaced every season. not true for number one receivers. Number one receivers tend to stay number one. So when you've got someone who is a number one receiver, both team-wise and fantasy-wise, number one caliber receiver on your team, it's not enough to give them up for anyone except, a top 9, top 10 running back, a guy who is a surefire bet to be there at the end of the season, still toting the ball 18 times a game.
All right. Well, that gives me something to think about there. Let's talk about stuff to think about, man, while we've got a couple of minutes here. Week 2, who do you got? Obviously, the Thursday night games in the books. Who are your sits and who are your stay away froms here this week?
With the whole situation in Baltimore, it's a great matchup, against Oakland. But I'm very concerned about that offense in general. I think it could be a pretty low-scoring game. Oakland is obviously not very good, but I wouldn't get too overconfident about Justin Forsett. I wouldn't get too overconfident about Steve Smith Sr. I saw some stat that said Steve Smith, for his career, after a game that he had, where he gets only, let's say, 2 catches for less than 30 yards, something like that, he consistently gets breakouts every other, after each one of those games. Well, that's meaningless. The Steve Smith of 10 years ago is not the Steve Smith of today. So I would be cautious about people being overconfident. On the flip side, I would urge people to be very confident about Cincinnati. I've been pushing them all summer and into the season. Andy Dalton is one of my most underrated quarterbacks. Marvin Jones is one of my favorite sleeper receivers once he gets his foot in. No pun intended, because I think it was his foot that kept him out all last year. But he is, he had like 8 or 9 touchdowns in 2013. He's fully capable of putting up big numbers. And you combine him and Tyler Eifert and A.J. Green. He's got and obviously Jeremy Hill. Anyone in Cincinnati going into, playing San Diego, Cincinnati could easily put up 30 points against San Diego this week. Love Ryan Tannehill this week. It's a great matchup for him. He didn't really have his foot in last week in Washington. It's unusual to have a team play back-to-back easy road games to start the season, against Washington, against Jacksonville. So if Tannehill can show that he's worthy of being a top 12 quarterback this week, the road is going to get a little bit easier going forward. Yeah, some of the matchups are going to be tougher, but they're going to be playing home a lot more than on the road, and he's still gelling with his receivers. He's never played with Greg Jennings. He's never played with Kenny Stills. He's never played with Devontae Parker. He only played with Landry maybe, for a few games last season. Really, Rashard Matthews is the only guy he knows in that receiving corps. He's never played with Jordan Cameron. So the thing about Tannehill is, and he was a guy that a lot of people liked this preseason. I liked him. I didn't love him, but I liked him this preseason. But I love him as a streaming option this week because every week he's going to get a little bit stronger, a little more comfortable in that offense, and this is the matchup to take advantage of it.
Sounds good. I'll tell you what, I was curious before I let you go. After 1 week, a lot of people overcorrect and everything, especially in the NFL. Is there anything that woke you up in week 1 that you think is not just a 1 week aberration, that you said, whoa, this is a different dynamic than we thought it was going to be, or this guy is going to be a much bigger player than we thought, something along those lines?
Well, DeMarco Murray is someone that people really need to be concerned about. The yards per carry was abysmal in a plus matchup. He should have dominated, and he didn't. Yeah, he got 2 scores, but when you look at his yards per carry, it shows that there's some weakness there. Ryan Matthews, his value goes up. Darren Sproles, obviously, his value goes up, although he's 32, so he's got a pretty low ceiling, in terms of consistency. But DeMarco Murray is someone, I mentioned it last week on this call. And, when people have 400 plus carries in a season, the wheels fall off most of the time the next season. When they don't, mediocrity is the name of the game. And with DeMarco Murray, we saw mediocrity that was laced with a couple touchdowns. But there's going to be a lot more mediocrity to go. And I would urge people to be very, very, concerned about that. And then I would say also the Sean McCoy situation. I put them kind of in the same camp. I think I had them ranked 14th and 15th, something like that, among my receivers, or 13th and 14th. Both of those guys, such extraordinary talent, but such big workloads. And McCoy's in a situation where you saw Carlos Williams steal a touchdown from him. You see now that he's still hurt. I think he might be questionable heading into this weekend, and I think it's a true questionable, not an actual. And so those are two examples of running backs where the old adage is, well, take a running back in the first round or take a running back, two running backs first and second. That's the reason why you don't. These were two guys who were highly overrated entering the season. And right now, they're both looking less than what they looked like last season.
Tell you what, I'm glad you brought up McCoy. I was going to mention him anyway. I mean, to me, there should be huge concern that is going to be a big-time injury. I mean, and I saw somebody point this out when they went back. I can't remember who I was reading, but they quoted Ryan during the preseason when he talked about how they were lucky the muscle didn't come off the bone with that injury. That preludes a much more serious injury, perhaps, than what people are letting on there. I wanted nothing to do with him in any of the fantasy drafts, and neither in the real world. I'll throw one at you on the way out the door. I pulled up the roster of the team that wanted to make a trade for me, and I'm just curious. If I was to move Keenan Allen, Jeremy Hill, and somebody else, maybe a Kendall Wright, would that be an adequate value, or am I shortchanging myself?
No, if you could get Jeremy Hill, that would be a steal for you. Jeremy Hill, he was my number 3 running back this preseason. He's someone who I would want on my roster in all instances, and that would be a steal for you.
All right, then I know what I'm targeting, baby, in the Auto Shop League.
One quick thing, J-Rocc,
if
I could, real quick. When the story is written on this Buffalo season, if they don't get to the Super Bowl, because anything I think at this point short of a Super Bowl appearance will be seen as a letdown for a team that, invested in the best, running back that they could get, and giving up Fred Jackson for no apparent reason other than to clear some salary. That will be the story of the season for Buffalo. I think this is a case where the team probably doesn't want to acknowledge that there is a bigger problem with McCoy than there actually is. That's the scary part, and that everything they invested in could have been for nothing. And I think they need to play this very carefully. They got a huge win last week, but again, when the story is written on this, besides not having an elite quarterback, which they can't really do anything about, that's the issue right there. Their running game is more of a mess than people realize, and fantasy owners need to steer clear.
Maybe Chip Kelly wasn't racist after all. Maybe he just knew an injury was coming. Maybe he just was trying not to have a broken running back. I'm just saying. Maybe he wanted a healthy running back. I don't know. I mean, people throw those accusations out there. BJ Riddell, Fantasy Football for Winners. The blog is Fantasy Football for Winners. You're on Facebook under that name, and people can tweet with you all the way up until tip-off, kickoff, beginning of their games, whatever, at BJ Riddell on Twitter. Yes?
Absolutely. Unless I'm putting one of my kids down for a nap, that is the case.
That's it. If it is, you can blame the kid if you miss something last minute, man. So there you go. Get them in early. BJ, let's see how week 2 goes down, and then we'll do this thing again next week.
Sounds good, J-Rocc. Have a great weekend.
You got it. My man, BJ Riddell, he's our own personal guru here for fantasy football. If you guys have questions, if you want me to ask them, send them to me at the Sports Fix CLE on Twitter, at the Sports Fix on Facebook, the Sports Fix at AOL.com. Leave them on the hotline, whatever it is, and I'll ask BJ. Or you can tweet him yourself, leading up until the beginning of the games every week, all the way up to it. So make sure you keep up with BJ Riddell. Fantasy Football for Winners. Guys, man, we're in the final stretch of today's show. Tons of things going on. Obviously, you've got the Browns and the Titans coming up this weekend. We talked a lot about that earlier on. The Buckeyes and Northern Illinois, the defending MAC champions, and Urban Meyer all week long talked about how that's a Big Ten quality team. I know that people will talk about the MAC and how the MAC has never won. The Buckeyes are 30-0 against the MAC. The one loss that they do have was when Akron wasn't a part of the MAC back when they beat Ohio State way back in the day. Undefeated against the MAC, but this is a Northern Illinois team that has beaten Big Ten teams in the last several seasons in a row. They beat Northwestern. They beat Minnesota. They beat Iowa. They beat Purdue. I mean, again, that's not the bastions of the Big Ten, but it shows that they could play some Big Ten ball. They're 5-4 since 2009 against the Big Ten, and they've won their last 3 in a row. They've done very well. They're the best team in the MAC since 2009 against the Big Ten. So it's an opportunity. They're a better team than people think. And we talked the other day when Dan was previewing the game about the quarterback, Drew Hare. He can ball. He's already got things going early on in the season. We talked a bit about him kind of targeting his main wide receiver, but either way, he's got an arm and he can target him, and he's out there moving. He's a running quarterback as well. Last year had nearly 1,000 yards on the ground. This season already, he's got over 700 yards. He's got 6 TDs, no interceptions. He's got some carries on the ground. He can move around. He's definitely a threat for the Buckeyes defense to keep an eye on. That's probably the biggest thing for them to worry about there. And then obviously they've got the return man as well, Tommy Lee Jones. No, I'm just kidding. That's the guy from The Fugitive. Tommy Lee Lewis is the big return man. He's one of the most dynamic players in the country. He's been injured the last few seasons as well. The defense, the Huskies, have not turned the ball over primarily the last several seasons. They're top 10 in the last 2 years in turnover margin. They get turnovers. They don't hurt themselves. That's another place that Ohio State is playing a very fundamentally sound football team here. And if it sounds like I'm spending a lot of time hyping up NIU, hey, I still think the Buckeyes win this thing by 14, 20, 21 points, somewhere in that area, but it's not going to be anything more than that. And I think for a while, it may be one of those games that makes Ohio State look bad when really people are just underestimating their opponent. And I'll tell you what, something else to keep in mind, that they've got a big offensive line. They are able to keep people off of that quarterback, Drew Hare. The Buckeyes defense has got some work for him, and I think it'll take into the second half before the Buckeyes get that work really done. They will pull away and they will prevail, but I think NIU is going to make a heck of a game out of this and make a great statement for themselves. And people that are sleeping on them are going to see a heck of a football game. And people that don't watch the game, I think, will look at the stats afterwards and make a bigger deal out of a poor Buckeyes performance than what it actually was, which is a better team that they were taking on. And the Indians this weekend taking on the White Sox, 3 at Progressive Field. Chris Sale, Cody Anderson, first game. Carlos Rodon, Carlos Carrasco, a battle of Carloses in the second. John Danks and Josh Tomlin, the third matchup. Indians straight up need a sweep in this bad boy, to be totally honest with you. They don't have much time to monkey around. They can't even take 2 out of 3. They've got to sweep this one. White Sox have won 4 in a row at Progressive Field. They've won 5 of the last 7 games in this series. They have outscored the Indians by 3 touchdowns this season, 65-45, and they've held the Tribe under 3 runs 10 different times. Tribe comes into the game 14 of 20 that they've won, looking to win 3 more here this weekend, keep themselves in things before they head out on their final road trip of the season. They go to Minnesota, and those games could mean a whole lot more if the Tribe sweeps the White Sox here this weekend. You've got some dollar dogs, and I believe there's fireworks, and there's all kinds of things going on as usual here. Fill the place up. It's the White Sox, and the fireworks will hopefully be on the field and not just in the bleachers tonight after the game. And then, of course, you wrap it up with the Browns and the Titans on Sunday. We'll talk about that on Monday. Dan Wismar from the Cleveland Fan and Everybody Hates Cleveland will be here talking Browns, talking Buckeyes, talking Tribe. All the news of the weekend will go around the slate of the NFL. And speaking of football, if you want to get your fix one more time, catch me Friday night. It's the Integrity Radio High School Football Game of the Week on 1330 a.m. and WINTradio.com. Tonight, number 2 school in the region, Menor, off of a tough blowout loss to St. Xavier in Cincinnati. They come back home. They face Euclid. I'll call the action with Arnie Hamilton tonight. WINTradio.com for all the details. And then we'll be back here Monday, noon, same bad time, same bad channel. You know how we do it, live across the Sports Fix Radio Network. Guys, you are chock full of things to do this weekend. Enjoy your football, your Buckeyes, your Browns, the NFL, the Indians chasing down the wild card. And we're just 30 days away from the start of the Cavs season. Training camps 2 weeks from now and preseason games in a month. They play a couple of those, and then they play them for real, baby. We're right there, getting closer and closer. You get closer to coming back here Monday. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you, baby, right here Monday at noon, live on the Sports Fix.
We hustle, don't sleep, out here in Cleveland, Cleveland, Cleveland.
Okay, now here we go. Welcome to the Cleveland show, but this ain't no cartoon. Reality is all we know. You're tuning in to Bravo. Yeah, you hear me everywhere, but it's only one of me. Let me make that very clear. Yeah, I'm from that terminal. You can see the lake from here. Faith in my teams, we keep getting closer every year. But we got the king, though, so hopefully we overcome. Yes, I have a dream, and I know I ain't the only one. Modell tried to steal my heart, but we brought it back. Thanks to Cleveland Clinic, now they call them Kiss the Cardiac. Rock Hall, Science Center, Tower City, all of that. Warehouse District, Euclid Corridor, and all the flat. You know that I'm a Tribes fan, and I love Slimans. Crockett Park's the perfect place for me to spend some time in. Baby, this is Cleveland. It is so much more to us. You can even go to Severance Hall to see an orchestra.
Cleveland, we rep our city.
Yeah.
Blue lights separate the ground from the gritty. We're sick fitted. Hood pass cover any city that we visit. When you're from Cleveland, survival's a must on these streets. We hustle, don't sleep. Out here in Cleveland, Cleveland, Cleveland.
You know that I'm from
Long nights, cold weathers, it ain't nothing pretty. So much hate up in this itty bitty city. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. Put your hands up in the air, everybody say yeah, yeah.